As you can see, we are at the pinnacle of parts organization when it comes to rebuilding motors. Well, here we go once again with another round of improvements. The O2 did alright last year, but it took a little bit of a beating, and there's definitely some things that we need to fix on it. So the first thing to go on this is the seat. I mean, the cover's kind of falling apart, and we've been stringing it along with duct tape, but we need to upgrade. This is definitely not your traditional seat. All kinds of plastic brackets and those little side pads on the bottom, and you gotta cut the seat cover, and the whole seat base is like one piece with the tank. So if we end up getting rid of this, we're gonna have to cut it right there behind the tank. Well, we took care of that. Well, I guess I ought to explain why we're tearing the seat apart. This is the new one that's going on there. Now don't worry, this isn't an actual, Boss seat for this chassis. It was an eBay special, I think off of like a mid to late 2000s F1000 Mountain Series something or other. And is this going to fit? I don't know, but we're going to make it fit somehow. This is an instance where you buy something and then you figure out how to make it work after the fact. I'm sure there's going to be some cutting and restitching of the seat cover and the foam inside there. But I gotta say, the one amazing thing is how light this seat is. I mean, it's like a few pounds. Compared to that, I can't believe how heavy all those pieces of the seat, were. And we're also going to get a few more inches of height up here, which I think will help on this sled. So that's kind of where we need it. Doesn't quite fit perfect yet. So what's the first rule of modifications? Tear it apart to the point that there's no return. You have to fix it. So now that we have the foam exposed, we can start getting a pattern set up of how much we got to cut out of it. I gotta say, I'm kind of impressed and slightly intrigued by how these Boss seats are put together. I mean, believe me, they're not cheap to make, I priced one out for this sled, and that's why we didn't buy one new. That's why we bought secondhand. But they have the high density, lightweight foam on the bottom, and the softer foam here on top. As you can see, it's quite the seamless connection there between the two. I wonder if they, mold, this bottom part and then inject the lighter density foam up top, or if they cut the two and then use an adhesive to bond them together. Got to be an interesting process on how that happens. You've also got this thin layer of foam here sewn into the top seat cover. So what we got to do is envision moving the seat about 4 inches forward. Okay, so we're basically going to trace out the contour of the tank over and back around onto the seat there, and start gingerly cutting chunks out of that foam. Well, we're getting there. Still got a bit more trimming to do. It's just like filleting a fish. Well, it's getting there. So as it turns out, we kind of needed some more of this plastic down here as a spacer to kind of follow the taper of the tunnel and keep the bottom of the seat level. Now, one problem that I ran into during the test sitting was there was a hollow spot underneath the front of the seat there, back behind the tank. I guess the new seat has the tank that comes further back underneath of it, and that is used as support for under there. So the seat was too soft and, deforming too much. So what we did is we got the old seat foam out of there, because it already has the contour of the current tank there in it. And we basically cut it to fit inside the cavity in the seat. So there's our filler panel. Could have used this harder foam, but we didn't have any. So we're ripping the chain case apart to put some lower gearing in it. And I don't know who the heck put all that RTV silicone in there. We're like 5 minutes into this job and we already lost one of the bolts for the chain case cover. I mean, it was just right there, and now it's vaporized. So we're making some pretty drastic changes because that's the parts we had laying around. So the stock top sprocket is a 24 tooth, and we're going down to a 19. And that's going to require a shorter chain, which that came with the parts I had for that. And I'm going to use the remainder of these reverse parts to put in my other ThunderCat that doesn't have reverse. And instead of putting the stock 24 top sprocket back in that, I think I'll probably try and find one, you know, down 1 or 2 teeth. Hopefully keep the same chain, but gear it just a little bit lower. This long track, I mean, I've checked everything for restrictions or binding or anything, and it just has a really tough time, you know, getting moving. It seems like you're just burning the belt when you're always just creeping it along. So, you know, maybe this is a little bit overkill going that low, but we'll give it a shot and see how it likes it and then go from there. Yeah, we got the chain case cover back on there, you know. Got all those hard to get to bolts in it. And then, yeah, realized that we forgot to put the fork onto the gear selector in there. Well, get to do it all over again. So we're pulling the shocks out of this thing. And it may shock you to know this, but, you know, we're running out of time and money on this project. So instead of actually getting the shocks rebuilt, because it looks like those shafts are probably a little bit pitted, we got some second-hand shocks off my other ThunderCat. Those shocks are getting rebuilt and revalved, and these ones are going, you know, they need rebuilt, but they're not that bad yet. They don't have as much air as these ones. So, yeah, second-hand shocks. I mean, better than what they got here. Well, it's coming apart more before it goes back together. And we keep getting sidetracked with other projects. Nothing like waiting until the last minute to try and finish a project. We're starting the tear down of the motor. You know, got to put a new water pump seal in it, new top end, new crank seals, go through everything, make sure everything's still good. And like 5 minutes ago, I was working on one of the lightest motors ever, that little 175. Now my back's hurting after heaving this thing up here. I think I found the reason why the top of my toolbox is dented. Alright, video note to myself. The little hood thing's on the center cylinder. So we got the water pump off. And you know, you're always inspecting. There's some chunks of metal in there. And that's slightly concerning. We're going to have to figure out where those came from. So they're actually slivers of steel, because they're magnetic. Yeah, we're going to have to do some digging. Thanks to the impact, I wish these things went back together as quick as they come apart. Well, things just keep getting worse. We pulled off the oil pump. Yeah, and there's more mystery metal in there. Alright, we got to the bottom end. And what's the first thing we start seeing? More metal. Now, you know, unless I'm listening to music, I don't want more metal. And I'm like, where the heck is this coming from? Dude. Talk about lucky. We were still running this thing. And, you know, I just decided for preventative maintenance, we're going to tear it down, refresh it, and go over everything. Whew. We came pretty close. I mean, the oil pump drive gear there, it definitely has some marks on the outside. Hopefully we can save that. I mean, it'll probably be alright if you don't have bits of metal grinding through it. There's what used to be a ball bearing. Wow. I can't believe this thing didn't seize up solid and just, like, you know, blow apart completely. I mean, we were driving this thing up in Canada for like miles and miles. And actually, no, I take that back. I was driving it locally for like 20 plus miles a trip. I can't believe this thing like didn't blow apart. I mean, we had it. Well, that's nice. We had to be close to this thing, just imminent failure. That's crazy, man. I can't believe that this thing came that close to just utter destruction. Now, the only good thing to come about because of this is because of my hoarderitis. At the last swap meet, I bought a blown up ZRT 800 case, and it came with a counterbalance shaft, okay? And like 2 cylinders out of the 3 that were also trashed. However, I'm like, yeah, you know, it's always good to have an extra counterbalance shaft laying around just in case you need it. So as if things can't keep getting worse, I noticed this going on. Apparently, these motors run surprisingly smooth with only 1/3 of a functioning counterbalance shaft. Well, there you go. Now, I've been trying to find an entire extra ThunderCat that was kind of, you know, bad cosmetically just for parts, because these crankshafts are not cheap to buy rebuilt or to have them rebuilt. And, you know, I kind of assumed that this sled had a good engine in it. Well, boy, we better start shopping for another spare. Now, I'm sure that there were some metal shavings that got through this bottom end somehow, some way. So we're going to have to give this thing a thorough flushing, wash out the bearings as best we can, and then give everything a thorough inspection and kind of hope for the best. I'm not going to lie, going to be keeping an eye out for a spare engine or something, because I don't know how long this bottom end's going to last. I think it has about 6,000 miles on it. Now, I mean, 6,000 miles really isn't bad for one of these. However, when you've got that kind of stuff rolling around in it. Alright, I don't know why, but this is the thing I'm most impressed with. The oil pump shaft, okay? It is actually wore out from all the crap rolling around in there. But it was still going somehow. I had hopes of getting this project completed in a couple of weeks or so to, you know, take up on a big ride up north and, you know, actually use that long track. However, I don't know if we're going to make it or not, so we might be going with plan B, going with a short track ThunderCat. I mean, I'm really glad I caught that crankshaft, you know, counterbalance thing going before it completely blew, but I'm still kind of bummed that I actually found out the motor wasn't as solid as I thought it was. I thought this was going to be a, you know, just a basic rebuild, freshen up, put some new pistons in it, and, you know, be good to go for another few thousand miles. Not sure where we stand now. As you can see, we are at the pinnacle of parts organization when it comes to rebuilding motors. I mean, putting an engine back together is supposed to be like a puzzle, right? I mean, that's how you learn. Random pile of parts. Everything basically only has one spot that it can go to, and you figure it out from there. Time to stud the track up, because we don't ride without studs. And the old stomper back there, since it's in the shop, not doing much of anything, but we got it tied up and it's making a great work table at the moment. I guess I should talk about the track. Yeah, we actually spent the money and bought a brand new track. Now, believe me, this was not by first choice. It's extremely hard to try and find a 1.5-inch track that I kind of needed for this project. Now, the 2-inch track that's currently on the sled, you know, that was pretty reasonably priced. And I had initially thought about just cutting off all the lugs to get it down to 1.5 inches so I could put studs in it. But the only problem is those lugs are really soft, even down at the base, and they bend over, you know, because it's made for deep powder, not really trail riding and, you know, digging in and grabbing. Now, Camoplast makes some crossover tracks that look pretty cool. However, I'd always been hearing stuff about these composite tracks, and never really know anybody that had first-hand knowledge or experience with one, so I was kind of interested to try it. It's made in Russia. It's 15 by 144 by 1.5. Now, one other advantage that this track had over the Camoplast and stuff are these little extra cutouts here over top of the track clips. Now, the ThunderCat has the heat exchangers running down here right above the track clips, and you got to clearance these on the taller tracks to clear. So this one's already got a bit of a dip down about 1/4 of an inch right over top the track clips. Alright, the best thing so far about this composite track is that when you're drilling this thing out and you're burning through those holes, it smells like barbecue. So, man, the longer the track, the more mind-numbing this work gets. Well, the local beer distributor's definitely upping their game on random beers. Well, there it is, done. So one minor detail that I maybe should mention about the composite tracks, I know at one point they had a thing where they would not warranty any tracks that had studs in them. Now, I mean, I put studs in all of my trail sleds. You need them with the conditions we get around here, so I don't even know if this is covered under warranty or not, or it's probably voided, but you know, that's what we do with new products. So we've got our swap meet sourced counterbalance shaft that we got to clean the bearings out and give them a thorough inspection along with the crankshaft. But anyways, you can see that movement there. That's supposed to be a tight bearing fit between this aluminum insert and the oil pump shaft. So she's pretty fried on that front. We were able to scrounge this up out of the part pile, which was a good aluminum piece. I know I had one of these, I just can't find it, so we had to buy a new one. Now, I actually thought this was going to be a bit of a challenge, you know, trying to find a good used part out there. Turns out, once you figure out the part number for this, I was able to find a new old stock one of these for like 18 bucks shipped, okay? Which was cheaper than the used ones that people were selling, so it pays to do your homework sometimes. I got these pieces out of like an LT Gray 440 motor, which the drive shaft is different. However, the little cast iron bushing on the other side was good, so we got that just in case. See? Pays to hoard parts. And another issue that I almost forgot about was the gas tank. Now, I had wrapped a bunch of friction tape around here, encapsulated with rubber bands, and then electrical tape to seal off the crack right there that goes through the filler neck. So we're going to have to get the soldering iron out and some junk plastic and weld this back together. On a side note, I really need to fix the amount of play in the steering, but we'll probably forget about it, so this is a reminder to myself.